workshop on April 10th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, Mr. David McGraw.
Here.
Ms. Megan Edwards. Here. Mr. Gary Paytown.
Here.
Ms. Frances Pawlowski. Here. Ms. Christy Elflin. Mr. Thad Mosley.
Here.
Mr. Ron Whittington.
Here. All right, what is first on our agenda?
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I gave you guys a couple of extra papers on the table, and if I could, I would like to just kind of go over those with you really quick, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
So the lovely, colorful flyer, that is our Friday Meet the Artist event. I say our very likely, that is not a CRA, city, or art committee sponsored event. That is the artist himself hosting this event. It will be at Cup of Joe from 10 to 11. It will be in that side room that they recently expanded into. This is not a formal event by any means. There will be no presentation, no handouts. This is simply because the artist is based out of Miami and he just wants an opportunity to shake hands, meet people, say hello, and just kind of, again, talk face to face about what inspired him from the area to do this project. So it'll be there for an hour, and then staff is going to be working with him to go over to the site and just kind of, again, get a feel for things. And then we'll be talking a little bit about, I think I mentioned at our last meeting, he wants to source the concrete and the tile work and things like that locally, so staff will be meeting with him about that as well.
So,
yes, sir.
it's a good time to remind everyone that if you're there with other board members, make sure not to discuss any board business. Just talk to the guy.
Yes, this is just about meeting an artist. I will say, to be safe, because I prefer to err on the side of caution and not get myself in trouble, this is noticed. This is a legally noticed that there will be multiple board members and multiple council members in the same location. I still would encourage what the chairman suggested, but just to cover ourselves, the last thing we would want is somebody accidentally talking about a project, and then the next thing you know, we're on the front page of the paper. So, but yes, the intent of this is to just meet the artist, say hello, and introduce yourselves. The other thing in your packet, we're kind of just doing housekeeping around here and kind of going over some things internally, policies. One of the things when you're sworn in, I know some ethics and things like that are referenced when you're sworn in. What you have in front of you is the actual ordinance that adopted the Code of Ethics. This applies to all council members and all city board members, including advisory boards, so even the art committee is held to this as well. I wanted to provide everyone with a copy of this just because we do have a lot of new people. We're kind of in a new season with the agency. We've been really busy lately, and I just want to remind everyone of what the Code of Ethics are. So I encourage you in your free time just kind of read over that, familiarize yourself with it. If you have questions, let me know. But I did meet with administration, and we've been handing those out to everyone. So just kind of wanted to remind everyone that that exists. And then those were the two documents I had for you guys, in addition to your regular agenda.
Any questions on any of those items from the board? All right, what's next?
So, on our items for discussion, we have our City Council CRA workshop topics. These topics have stemmed from conversations with the mayor, the chair of the CRA, administration, staff. We've kind of been talking, it's been a while since we've had a joint meeting. Actually, a lot of you on the agency now probably haven't even had a joint meeting with council, so we realized we really kind of needed to get everyone in the same room. We have a lot of things coming up. This is a really great time because we are right in the middle of FY25 budget planning, so this will be a really good time to host that meeting. The topics that are listed in your memo that you received in your packet, these are the topics that council wants to sit down and discuss with the CRA. Now, I want to be clear, that does not mean that there aren't other projects and there aren't other important topics. There are. These are the ones that we want to focus on. I also typed up, and you had in front of you, just a quick bulleted point sheet of just a couple of quick notes. I mean, I typed as much for you guys as I did myself to remind myself where all of these were as well. We'll kind of start with the P3 project. Again, that is public-private partnership. That is for the parking lot that is south of Lakeland Plaza. This project is essentially directed by council. That lot is owned by the city. And the Florida statute requires that an architect develop formal design criteria prior to issuing that RFP. So that is where we're at right now. Jones Edmonds As you guys all know, we're the ones who we have a continuing services contract with, and they are drafting that design criteria. Again, that criteria is based off of the topics that we had previously discussed. I say this all the time, but several months back. When I say design criteria, I do not mean that it is the building has to be white, the door has to be blue, the flowers have to be orange, purple. That's not what we mean. It has to meet certain requirements as far as having the different types of spaces that the city wants to see, the parking the city wants to see, maybe some nods to an architecture style, but we're not talking about very specific design criteria. We're not at that stage. Landscaping and overall beautification was another topic. Parks and Recreation right now has been re-landscaping the area all around. Yes, sir.
Should we open it up for discussion before moving on, or?
It's up to you. I can go through the one-page list, or we can stop now and go over each item. It's whatever you guys prefer.
Well, let me ask, does anyone have any questions regarding the first tab?
I've got some comments, and I don't know really to whom to address them.
Sure.
Couple of ideas they may have previously considered before my presence here, but you could make the case that that parking lot, because of its location and situation and next to Lake Plaza, is actually blighted. It is a blight, arguably. You could argue that, then the CRA could move things inside or outside of its boundaries. And the city owns it anyway, so the parking could be put somewhere else by the city. At 35 feet, it's hard to get all that parking in there and have a 14, 15-foot ceiling in your commercial side for proper build out for commercial use. You got to have a lot of vertical space to really get up there and do it right. But arguably the CRA, if they declare it blighted, and I'm not sure how that goes with the city owning it, could move it inside or outside of the existing CRA boundaries. You parking for city employees could be on the first level on the south side, which would give you a nice facade facing Lakeland Plaza itself with no ramps or parking or anything in its face. You could have a north side facade similar to what's on page 16 of the 2016 plan that the S&S consultant provided us. And one concept that was really pounded on when that plan was being developed and presented was passive observation. You have all those storefronts, all those windows, all those people looking out at Lakeland Plaza. In a lot of ways, that's sharper than having a poor policeman or a patrol person circling around different blocks. And so it was a big concept at the time that particular plan was presented. If you look on page 16, you'll see the facade, and that setback and looking at Lakeland Plaza would be attractive and to be height-wise appropriate as opposed to 55 feet was considered, which was towered over Lakeland Plaza. So I'm going to get to this as fast as I can before we go. A developer could create parking west of 3rd to replace the eliminated spaces and put that in the deal with the city. City of Jacksonville Beach could create the parking itself west of 3rd and swap it out. The other thing is the spaces really need to be replaced. I know we have an obligation to maintain parking in order to get beach renourishment and other things, but we've added a lot of parking lately, and that's, again, a question back to our legal counsel. Do those spaces need to be replaced? Would we want to replace the ones that we didn't keep, just kept the ones with the city employees? I mean, I don't know. I don't know who to ask. And the other thing is, of course, there's an existing parking lot off on 2nd Street that was done dead level instead of garage. I don't necessarily think putting a garage is a great idea, but that's another place the parking could be put. But the idea of moving it or not having to recreate it, I think could make a gorgeous building there with street level facade. And the shops and stores, they open, they close, but if you build them right, they could be refitted for different purposes and uses as time goes by. So that's all I had. Thank you very much. But somehow, some of this needs to get into the conversation with the criteria that we're trying
If
to
I
develop.
may, we've basically gone over everything you just said in the past years. This has been a project that's been going on for about 7 years now.
Mhm.
I agree with you, the facade makes sense. I think we're at a stage where we're almost where we have most of the stuff to where we actually could do something. If I remember right, we talked to two past city attorneys about the parking issue. And I should agree that parking could be elsewhere, but we were advised that we had to have so many parking spaces in that space because of the way that the property was owned. So I do think it would be nice to have an overview of what all those discussion points were, but everything you said said there, I was just smiling because we have hashed, and like, we've gone through two totally different, proposals, just like Latham Plaza at this point. Two totally different proposals, and here we are, still not done, because.
I did say they probably, so they previously discussed and considered.
Yeah, but I heard you say that.
But we
too.
need to make sure that they're currently being considered if appropriate.
Well, according to the proposal we have out there, it's up to the architects to come up with the design to fit the parking garage. You're concerned about the height level of the garage. I mean, I guess I would assume that they have no concern unless they would have told us that, because I think they have to, as part of this proposal, replace every single spot.
Yeah.
Or add more.
Why do we?
But let me throw one more thing. When I met with the mayor with the business owners a couple weeks ago, I asked, I don't know, I forget his title, Shaughnessy, was if we had a parking garage there during that issue that happened, would it have been, easier to control? And he said, absolutely, that's a choke point. So I mean, having a parking garage there instead of an open parking lot would actually have made policing that situation better, according to him. So.
And the same thing, we actually even commissioned a parking study, because we've been trying to push the city council to let us move the parking to second. We actually had, second was, parking garage was approved. It was approved and disappeared. Sorry, I might be going against my new policy C that I should not be saying. I'm gonna get dinged. No disparity if anybody. That being said, even though we went through hiring that study, and now we provided 2 different locations, including the Ritz parking lot space, and trying to get that to where we could do it. We were told by the attorney 2 attorneys ago that based off some kind of code and some kind of thing, that the way that it's labeled, we had to have, because I know the parking lot at the pier is different than this one.
Yes.
The parking lot at the pier has a contract with the city.
Correct.
For pier, but this one over here had some kind of requirement for not quite all the same parking spots, but like 85% of it.
Didn't we get an artist rendition of this at one point?
We did.
Thad might not have gotten that. Okay, because, based on the design that we saw, just just throwing it out there. I mean, yeah, it's beautiful. We've got a promenade. Everything's looking at the plaza. It's,
It has
a lot of those ideas you just mentioned are incorporated in that initial.
It was
design.
the reason it was never provided is it was very, very unofficial
Correct.
thing. It was just kind of like,
But it's a concept of what.
I hate to say a Google image search, but essentially that, and then kind of beefed up to sit on our lot. So it was nothing that, it wasn't like something that was taken and approved by the agency and council, and this is exactly what it's gonna be.
Correct.
It was just, to Thad's concerns, is it gonna be just this monolithic gray wall in the heart of our downtown? And I think that image helped show that it was not gonna be that.
So the RFP, if I remember correctly, was supposed to be, we did the parking study, we did what
Market
we needed
research.
downtown.
Market analysis.
Marketing analysis,
Yep.
so we could provide it with it. We updated the annual what's coming up here
Yep.
thing, and then we provided a hypothetical, this is what it could look like
Yes.
hypothetically with all these parking spots required. And then we had a big argument, I would say discussion, about removing that would give us better, space for, events, and like bigger event spaces and what have you. Just talking about different ideas and as
Yeah.
far as like, making it residential or making it commercial. We had all these discussions, so that was rendering, was supposed to be with this. And this RFP, if I remember, it was supposed to hypothetically already be out there, but we had.
We got held up by
some-
statute.
Right, by statute held us up. So all those things, I 100% agree with you, are very important. But I don't know the official remembrance of the official reason why we had to keep, I felt like it was 85% of the parking. I just don't remember.
Who's requiring the
I don't remember.
85%?
I just don't remember that.
That was just a criteria that we put in there. There wasn't any specific criteria
It wasn't?
for it, no. Not that I recall. I mean, I could be wrong. But
I think if we remove, what's that?
I was just gonna ask a question. You mentioned the proposal or RFP that's out there. Is there an RFP out there? If there is, I haven't
Couldn't
seen
we
one.
No,
consider it?
according to this bullet point, the third bullet point here, it has not been issued yet because.
Correct.
So that's what
We
I
got held up
thought.
by
I guess
statute.
maybe I misunderstood what you said. And then you mentioned the parking study. I've never seen a parking study for.
Oh, goodness.
That was so I think what we are referencing there was the big market analysis we did, and then how potential for, okay, what our code says we have to have in the way of parking for a different type of commercial spaces. So if it's retail, it's one thing, if it's commercial space, it's one thing. So that was all a component in that market
Also, the parking
analysis.
study they did for us to do paid parking. That's not us, that was the
Yeah.
city.
Yep.
That did that. There's two of them out there.
I guess the other one I'm not familiar with, I just haven't seen anything in the way of a parking study. One of the comments I would make is that before we even move forward, there's a couple of items that really need to be addressed by the city, and that has to do with parking overall. What do we want to do with parking in the downtown area? Since I've been on the board, which is now almost 5 years, all I've heard us do is talk about it, but nothing has ever moved forward, either at this level or at the city council level, as to really what are we going to do with parking downtown? We just want to maintain what we have? Do we want to create a parking deck? Do we want to minimize parking and create it somewhere else and, require people to park and then get
Yeah.
trolleyed in or something
We
along those
had
lines?
that talk though.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's where the whole idea of having the mixed-use garage kind of stemmed from. And it all kind of started whenever we were doing the comprehensive plan and then development code updates, because we do recognize, and that's Heather's expertise far more than mine, but that LDC comp plan update is gonna be covering some of that. Ultimately though, the decisions to what happens with parking downtown, this agency and staff can make recommendations, but at the end of the day, it is a council decision on, do we do away with parking, do we change the requirements in the central business district? But that is why the garage, mixed-use garage ended up where it did, was because council wanted to be able to keep some of that parking, and by having these spaces vertically on this site, we would be able then, in theory, to eliminate it and eliminate or lessen the requirements in other areas downtown.
And if I remember right, 3 years ago when they were going through, we were on hold for it because they had to change, we had recommended or talked about maybe changing the building requirements downtown to be not quite zero, but remove some of the parking, the parking is basically handcuffs for the properties. 'Cause
Right.
Not only can you not go up 35, but you also have to have so much
Yes,
property.
and
with
it's
parking.
very expensive to buy out
Yes,
parking
and
as
it's
well.
very expensive. So we had to ask them to address that because they were redoing all
Yep.
their documents, and we were on hold for that because if they could change the codes to where we could let builders build out more, we would provide the parking for the city, which focuses on Second Street. That's the discussions we're on hold, like we literally,
I think the reason why we're just staying at the same number of parking spots is because 95% of the time, don't quote me on that, we don't need the parking. We have plenty of parking.
Yeah.
But this city loves their events.
Yep.
And, I mean, there's 20, 30 days of events there that you need that parking, or we can't have it. So, I think that's why we're just splitting it right down the middle and just
But
staying
the
exactly
events
the
we
same.
have, 90% of those people who are coming in do not park right here. They're parking outside this area, walking it, biking.
They can't right now.
It's just, which is
So-
fine, which is what makes it a lively place, is not having all that parking. Making people come here in a different way.
you have
Well, one question is, could we reduce the amount of parking without suffering penalties from coral renourishment or in other ways? Could it be reduced? How about that for a question?
Yeah. I mean, I am a big believer in central parking and then letting more people be on foot and bike and all that stuff, but we cannot seem to get that message to those who have the authority to change it. And 3 years ago, we were put on hold, because we were doing the parking thing. It was right after you joined us, it might have been 4 years ago. We were talking about it, and the truth of the matter is, we can make a suggestion, but they have to change their code. And what's going to be, I think what's going to
Well,
float for a
yeah, and
while.
we are actively doing that right now, and council, was all on board with basically lowering the parking requirement downtown or making it completely zero, which means that we would have to supplement parking. So if a new restaurant comes in that would otherwise be required to provide 100 spaces, we're gonna tell them, you just have to provide 3 ADA spaces, we're gonna give you the rest of the parking.
Right.
That's
Which
like
is why we need
an
spaces
incentive to
garage.
come downtown is,
And on second,
we
and
have
on Brits.
public
Correct.
parking for you.
And
Right.
if we reframe the discussion to our mission, which is economic development, and you don't change anything with parking, but we're adding, an entire block worth of potential 2 stories of new businesses.
Yeah, tenants.
That's fitting our mission, you know, we're not losing parking spots, we're not gaining parking spots, we're just keeping exactly the same, but adding a lot more, you know, opportunities for,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, then the question is, could you move the parking spots?
Not in the middle of the town.
I don't think we have any
Lots
So
of
that's why we were doing that marketing study or whatever, figure out what it should be. So we were talking about, remember we were talking about making some streets one way so that we could funnel through
Yeah.
the Ritz, and we were gonna, it was suggested we buy that one property so we could add almost a whole block, so that we could have people go in and out in a certain direction, like we have all those talks. But, I mean, it's very good points,
Yeah.
very important things to talk about, and we're, like, we wanted to focus on Ritz by now, we wanted to be on the Ritz parking lot, but once again, I know the council, but I shouldn't say council, I know that they wanted the input of the citizens, that's why they put it on the ballot. So a lot of things got pushed back on the parking garage and the parking, because they wanted to know if they would have to change the code based off what people wanted for the building downtown, on adding some additional lane on the other side of Third. So there was a lot of those things too, but since the city basically said, no, we're staying at 35, now they had to go back to the drawing board on giving better parking. And I know that during a lot of our talks years ago, we had lots of residents complaining about people parking in their residential zone, not the
Yeah.
downtown zone, is creating a lot of havoc and theft and vandalism, so they didn't want people parking in their areas, which is why they proposed to add an extra couple streets to the downtown area, and why we're doing the south end and adding so much more parking on the south end, so they're not right in front of people's houses. So it's like, comments, but so yeah, I mean, all good points, 100%.
You're
All good
right,
points.
and it comes east of all of
Very,
that.
very
West of there.
Well,
Just a
they have
block away.
purchased the land and they tried to add that in the vote. The vote was.
Hold on, let's go one at a time, Gary.
One of the other things that dovetails with all this that really needs to be looked at is what do we want to do with First Street? You know, it kind of goes back to the urban planning issue as to whether it's, you know, all pedestrian walkway or one-way traffic. There are several different concepts within the urban trail, but somehow we maybe need to make a recommendation to city council needs to ratify it, that we're going in one direction because that has an impact on the other things we do related to the P3 and so forth. I think it's a critical factor along with the parking.
But I think we gotta stay focused and just talk about this lot, because when we start talking about all these other things, we get distracted.
Yep.
It is a part of everything, but I think this P3 is actually gonna be the driver for the stuff that goes around it.
Well, I kind of disagree with you there, because if you do proper planning, you've got to take into account all of these factors. If you just take one item and not address the other ones, then you're not going to end up with the best possible project. I think some of these other factors and all the planning that I've done in my career, you've got to take into account, because they're all on the table. We've all talked about them at different points in time. So it's not like it's a new item, it's something that's out there, so why not dovetail it in and get the decisions that you need so that you can come up with the best possible plan?
Since I've been on this board, from before I was chair, I feel like we've operated on the don't let good become the enemy of perfect. And if we're constantly searching for perfect, we're never gonna get anything done. I mean, we've gotta find a good plan that's gonna work and build up that. Clerk?
If I may, you know, those are extremely valid points, but I think what we're going into, and just, you know, I just celebrated my 3-year anniversary in this position. What I've seen in 3 years is we end up running in circles a lot on these topics, because we, I mean, we do just this, and we just talk it and 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 keep that going for 3 years. And, you know, it is a great point that First Street, Gary, I have 100% agree with you, it is very critical. However, council has made it abundantly clear now at several meetings, they are not there yet. That is not their priority with the urban trails, and they will not be making that decision right now. So who's to say if that decision is made in a year, a month, or 10 years? And it's like, if we want to keep holding off and they're not ready to make that decision, do we want to sit here for another 10 years?
Well, and you made a very good point there, which, you know, I was not aware of, and that is that council is saying that they're not ready to make a decision in reference to that. I thought that they were a little bit more motivated to make.
To my knowledge, not for one reason or another, not pros or cons, but their priorities right now are getting those few east to west connectors in place and kind of getting through those, and those are planned out now. I mean, our CIPs we're working on go through FY 28, 29 actually. So right now, those are the plans, and First Street is not one of them.
Hold on.
Yeah, first
Hold on.
rate is,
For the frame of this,
Yeah.
we're trying to say to city council, we're very interested in this building, this is a priority for us.
Yeah.
There are mechanisms in place with the city for the design. They won't get their certificate of they won't get approved to build that building by city council if the design goes against the greater picture. I mean,
Yep.
we're not in the design phase, we're not telling them what the design is. There's a lot of mechanisms to stop a builder from building something that doesn't mix with the city.
Yep.
So we don't have to worry about that right now.
So what is our main purpose right now? Just to tell city council, we're all on board, we want to do.
We're trying to have a consensus of these are the things the board wants to push for.
And we need to ask them or make recommendations for changes that they, only they can make for us to make it happen.
And I think this is our hard one.
If we chose to, but they've made it pretty clear over the years that that's not an option.
And to your point, Francis, you know, the changes, that is an interesting and challenging topic, because in theory, right now, once we get those design criteria from a certified architect at Jones Edmonds, we can put this thing out the next day.
It needs to go next day.
So there aren't necessarily, the projects listed on this sheet, well, there are a lot of changes that could be made to make things cooler, better, prettier, easier, however you want to word it. There is nothing that needs to happen to make any of this happen once we get whatever statutory requirement we are held to. So once we have that design criteria and procurement approves our bid package, we're ready to roll. We do not need anything additional from council.
Do we get to look at the RFP before it goes out?
The criteria probably, but typically we don't. I mean, city council doesn't look at the whole 300-page package. That's not something, it's about between 200 and 300 pages just because of legal jargon. So no, if you want to come by the office and sit down and read it, I am more than happy to do that, but I don't
One
like
page executive summary?
1,000%, yes. And that's usually, I feel like when we went out for like the playground RFP and things like that, we always provide you guys with a summary of, hey, these are the key takeaways, but we've never brought the full, yes, Mr. Gilmore?
We will provide a summary again.
Yeah.
We've done it before.
Oh, yeah,
Let me make everyone aware of a little shift in the process here.
Yeah,
When we originally started this program, we were of the belief that we could issue it as the redevelopment agency, assuming that we had control of that property. But after the attorneys looked at it, they said because the city owns it, then we have to follow the state statute as it relates to public-private partnerships and P3s. And that's a totally different program, which has caused a delay in this. In fact, I will tell you that that P3 requirement, since the city owns it, is going to mean that the city is going to have to own the parking garage itself, even though it will be developed by a private developer. So it's going to be a complex real estate transaction when we get into it, but the points I'm mentioning have already been discussed with the administration and everyone's on board. So it is ready to go, but that P3 statutory requirement means that there must be some general, to your point, design criteria prepared to be part of it, which is what Jones Edmonds is doing now, so we're waiting on it. But let me also reassure you that in terms of private development interest and commitment, it is still very much there. We're going to get some good proposals, which we'll be able to examine, for which you can make a decision and recommendation.
And just because you're in the, oh, sorry,
Okay.
just because you guys are deep in the weeds with this, can I ask a question? We have been told multiple times by past city manager and the current city manager has not completely said yes, or the same exact phrase, but we were told that the city never wants to be landlords. And
Well,
so, if we
they're
are
gonna have to own the
owning-
parking garage, but the way we're structuring this now, in terms of the retail facing around, we want the private developer to own that.
Okay, so how are we going to have a private developer own something, but yet we have to own, like, are they gonna be,
Two parts. They own the retail, we own the parking garage.
so they will not be integrated?
They will be integrated. It's gonna be a complex design process, that's what I'm saying.
So there is no we're paying them for rent, and there is no them paying us rent
Hmm?
based off this agreement, because we're apparently never going to be renters or leasers.
somebody's gonna have to pay for the parking garage, so yes, those parking spaces are not gonna be for free. The city is going to own it, the city will have to pay for part of that parking, absolutely.
But that would be part of the budget, won't be to the company that's gonna build it.
That's correct.
Okay.
And to be clear, that we are not reinventing the wheel, even though it's a complex
No.
process, this is done all the time, all
That's
over the
correct.
state. We've even talked to other communities that have done this, so it's complex and it can be intimidating, but it's been done and it can be done. And we have a wonderful new city attorney who just started, and God bless him, he is, got his work cut out for him, but he is wonderful, and I have no doubt that he will be great in helping guide us through this process.
And there's some good examples on how this has been done in
Yep.
downtown Jacksonville as well, that we can bring to the stuff as relates to some of the new parking facilities that have been constructed there.
So as a board, we're pretty comfortable saying this is a top priority for us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I was looking for.
Off the door.
All right,
Great.
let's go on to the next one.
Thank you, everyone. This one, landscaping overall beautification. I will give Parks and Recreation credit as much as I can. They have been absolutely wonderful. They're a great asset to us. Right now, they are working around the Ritz parking lot. Now that we are in a good season, it desperately needed it, and they are doing a phenomenal job. I actually got an update from Trevor today. They are working on that in 4th Avenue North, and rather than just kind of continuing on, as soon as that's done, they will email me. I will then email all of you. For you guys to just go out, check it out, give a thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever, and then I will report that feedback back to them, and then we will keep this moving. They really got held up significantly when they got in the downtown. Those of you that have been on this board for a while know every single system with our irrigation was completely shot. We thought it was just the in the ground stuff, and then when they got to the actual controllers, all the controllers were shot. And then we went through a time where everyone knows there were shipping delays, we could not get things, and when we finally got things and it was time to reprogram the controllers, guess what? We got hit with cyber attack and we were down. So it took them quite some time, and they have been working nonstop with it though, so big thanks to Parks and Rec. They are moving on that and doing a great job so far. Any questions you have, I'm happy to take them. I can't promise I'll have a technical answer. Landscaping's not my thing. I have artificial plants on my front porch, but I am happy to relay them to Trevor, who is the pro.
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure what they're doing up at 4th Avenue North.
Mhm.
I don't know that I picked up on the fact that something was happening there. There's certain islands that have the sand in it that we had talked about some
Mhm.
time ago, put in there, but most recently, within, I guess, the last few days, over by the pavilion, they put back in red mulch. And so I'm just curious as to why we're going in that direction when we've been talking about a white sand that was supposed to.
So I think the consensus that came from those meetings were to give the sand, the aggregate, the different types of mulch, and there were gonna be 3 options. That's what's decided, and that was what's in the minutes, so, sorry.
In my brain, it was already decided.
Yeah,
You guys didn't like the idea of the sand because how was it going to affect the drainage is how that came up. And so we talked about that. I'm happy to provide you with minutes in the recording.
I trust you, but
I don't make
remember
this
it.
stuff up
I
for
put
fun.
I put the state advocate at my office because I know how it affects with this. So my brain is
Yeah.
already doing that. We put it in because we were to match downtown. So
Yeah.
like, my brain, we were already doing it.
But I assume what they did around the pavilion was a stopgap, hey, let's freshen this up for the spring and blue.
How do you
Yes.
remember the conversation?
Last I remember, we were supposed to be voting on the 3 different options. I don't remember picking.
I just remember picking. I guess in my brain I was dumb.
And I'm gonna be honest, I am not the pro. I could be wrong. You know how many meetings we have? Like,
Oh, I know.
my brain's mush. It could be that. But to David's point, I think that's why they did the red mulch. I do know this, even when they were doing samples, red mulch, to my knowledge, was not one of them. The mulch that we had decided as one of the sample beds was the black rubberized mulch. The red, to David's point, was likely just to freshen that area up because it looked really bad. I do not think that will be one of the 3 choices, but I am happy. I will text Trevor right now
we talked about this wonderful compost
That
stuff that
aggregate.
goes into aggregate, that goes underneath, asphalt generally is what it's meant for. And,
Yep.
and how it doesn't drain and whatnot. So when you go look, just, think about that
And providing plants. I do distinctly remember the plants around the border to hold it. Yeah, you're right about that. And the plants, having those, the vegetation around the border to, when we do have rain events and we do have wind events, that aggregate, it doesn't flow away as easy as mulch.
If you guys wanna go look at it in real time, my office is completely surrounded in it at this point, or at least the back driveway is, and we had that big torrential rain and none of it went out of
Yeah.
the beds. And our beds are angled, so like, it's not like there's a block, it literally is an angled, the big ugly building, on Second?
Across from the shark fire tracks.
So, the Metropolitan, our parking lot's right next to that in Second, thank you, Rick. I'm sorry, I have opinions about that building, I don't know how it's built.
That's okay. But I will continue, as soon as I get the thumbs up that, hey, this is done, it's clean, it's how we want it to look, please go take a look, I'll let you guys know, and please provide feedback, and that way we can just keep this ball rolling, because I do agree red mulch is not necessarily the beachy look.
And you're welcome to dump as much water on it as you like to see how it looks.
When you see me out there with buckets of water,
That's
don't
fine,
call it
go
clouds.
for it.
You're voting for aggregate.
I am.
Just to be clear.
So when we talk to city
Yeah.
council, is this an opportunity to bring up, and this is something Chris has talked to, be unified on this, because I don't want it to be like a long ass. So it's landscaping, downtown beautification, I already know what they're going, well, I'm assuming what they're gonna say is how slow it's been, all these things broken, we've got that punch list that we keep talking about, and our ambassador downtown, that some people in the past have said that you were supposed to do, but that's not necessarily what you were hired to do, that whole conversation keeps coming up.
Yeah, I'm not landscaping
Is
downtown.
this a good time for us to bring up a budget, or them giving us extra staff?
Well, first, I think we need to present, supposedly, when we, I don't know, voted 8, 9 months ago, we said, all right, we're gonna be able to hire a third-party company, we're gonna start keeping stats. Is this the right opportunity to present those stats to them, so we can say, hey,
I don't think I got someone on board, did we? I know
We
put in the budget.
utilize Parks' existing contract that they have with their landscaping folks, so the people that do our landscaping downtown, we are able to pay for it because it's above and beyond. So anything an agency pays for has to be additional, so I can get some numbers on frequencies, how that's going, how we can improve from Parks and Rec before our joint workshop.
That'd be awesome. I think that's a good time to bring it up,
absolutely.
because I don't want it to be like another discussion with city council, and we say, well, we don't have the manpower, like, that feel like we've done the past 3 times.
I don't wanna beg, I wanna present.
And I would like to, and just, I hate the term devil's advocate, so I'm not gonna use that, because we're not, nobody here's devil, but just kind of on the opposite end of that, I do know Parks and Rec, Public Works, various departments, when you have these jobs that you're talking are $50,000 to $100,000 a year, to some that's like, oh, well, yeah, that's easy. To a lot of companies that do the kind of work we want done, they are not interested, because typically they don't have a lot of work out here, and they're gonna have to send an entire crew out here with their equipment, however many days it is per month, per week, whatever, and it's just not worth their time and their resources. And I do know that that was a major, major problem that Parks ran into a ton, and Public Works even, Gary, the paver issues on First Street that you brought up, we met with Public Works and we finally have somebody that's doing the work, but it took them going through like 4, maybe even 6 contractors before they could find someone to do such a, what they deemed a small job. Nobody wanted to come out and do the work. So that is something that we always, I feel like now, just kind of have to be mindful of, that the cards are kind of stacked against us in that way. So if we have opportunities where we have these kind of smaller sidebar projects, if it's something that we can kind of link together several big things, or we have a big project and we can have an addendum or something added to it, I think that would work a lot better, because we're just not getting work.
I think you just made the case for the ambassador. Good
That's
case.
our ambassador.
That,
What's the date of the joint workshop?
We don't know yet.
Okay, I kept her referred to like.
I'm sorry, I should have led with that. We do not know yet. It will be in May. It may be in place of our May workshop, but we are just waiting to see. We want as much
That's all
council
I
as we
need to know.
can.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are gonna add that as a bullet point. We're gonna be like, yay, let's go P3, and then we're gonna say landscaping's great, but
here's our data.
here's our data, and we would like some more help, please, if
Yes.
possible.
And I'll also sit down with Parks beforehand and get them on the same page, make sure kind of our side, staff-wise, we're kind of all on the same page as well, and I'll provide all this feedback to Parks and Rec as well, and make sure we're all ready.
So when you do the budgeting, Taylor, funding come from? Does it ultimately need to come from another program in order to accomplish that specific item? And, you know, which one are we willing to give up a little bit to accomplish that? I just see that as a
Yeah.
challenge for us all to figure out how we want to do that. It's,
Yeah.
Before you answer that, Jim, when the P3 building goes in, where does that part of the TIF funding, does that property tax, now that they're paying property tax for that building? Does that come? to
Once
the
it comes
CRA
on the
budget?
tax roll.
Get some tax
Takes a
yeah.
year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's gonna be a huge extra source. of
But
money.
it'll have to
you're
be,
way down the road.
But
I know.
the city owns it, not the CRA, so
And-
it's.
and
No,
She
so
just
the
mentioned
developer, the portion of the
Spring Hill
developer
hasn't hit
owns-
yet, but that's gonna be a big,
Okay.
big,
Yeah.
the commercial
Online
retail
this
portion
year.
that's owned by a developer, that will be taxed and that will be a part of the trust fund. So,
We're talking about immediate costs.
Right.
You're talking
Yeah.
5 years down the road before you start to see the first of,
Sure.
Yeah.
the tax benefits.
yes.
And so, how are we gonna pay for an ambassador at this
Sure.
point in time if that's the direction the
Um,
district wants to go?
So lucky for you guys, that's the fund that I get to have, playing with all those numbers. I have been, Heather knows, working probably several weeks straight now. Yes, I would be lying to you if I didn't say I had to shuffle money from other programs. I mean, I have. I basically created 2 to 3 versions of the budget, and one is where pretty much everything stays the same. And to be honest, that one's not very good, and it does not provide us an opportunity to do a lot. One of the budgets, I kind of moved money around. I've looked at where we're at over the last several fiscal years with our programming and where I think we can make some sacrifices. And I've been able to pull out a few $100,000 total that I've kind of got just sitting off to the side almost right now as a buffer. So I think it can be done. I think there's gonna have to be sacrifice and compromise. So I just want everyone to go into budget season knowing that.
No, it'd be good, obviously, we'll go through this budgeting cycle coming up here in the next weeks, I would assume.
Yeah, so staff has, we have our first sit down week after next, and that is with city manager, finance, and then kind of all of the key players that have an element in our budget, so Cape, Public Works, Parks, whatever. After that meeting, I'll have a really good grasp on which one of my 3 iterations are gonna work best. I really think it's gonna be kind of that middle of the road where we're gonna have to make some sacrifices in some funding areas to cover others. But I don't think the sacrifices are gonna be so great where we're going to lose the ability to do the things we wanna do. So I think we can make some things work. We're just gonna have to compromise.
Thank you.
So to wrap up landscaping, we're gonna get the data so we can present during our joint meeting.
Yes, sir.
And we're gonna see what we can do.
Yes, sir. And as soon as I know that Fourth and Britt's parking lot are done, I'll let you guys know so everyone can go check it out.
All right, next one.
This one, fingers crossed, should be an easy one. Facade grant and potential incentives. I will say the facade grant program has been very successful. I've actually now finally been able to cash out on some of those grants. They've been inspected, reimbursed, gotten building permits officially done. I'm super pleased working with business owners. I want to give, Casa Marina Hotel props on the record. Were like textbook with what program, they did great. They got all new doors and windows that are historic, like the building. All their inspections, everything went smoothly. Got all of their information in our system. We were able to cut their check this week, and they were one of our recipients of the $100,000. So thank you guys for that. Thank you to the businesses for applying. This has been wonderful.
So in regards to our joint meeting, we're saying we wanna just keep this going?
Yeah, absolutely. Something to consider, and it's vague with our grant right now, how it's written, and that was a little bit intentional. How far do we want this to go? Right now, we're really, what I've seen has been, paint, doors, windows, which is great. Those are needs, and they do beautify the downtown. What I'm hearing kind of now is, well, we need a new dumpster enclosure, and that's not something you guys think about, but this is really expensive. Can this grant cover that? And that is something required, so that's not just something like, oh, well, we think this is cool. Like, they have to have that.
I think we already talked
We
about
did,
that. There was something that was being done document-wise because
We
there's
did.
like the regulations and stuff that have to go.
Right.
No, we
But-
just didn't do a 1-for-2 match, we just did a 1-for-1 match.
A 1-for-1 and it was,
One
and it
for one
was,
for dumpsters, yeah.
and they were able to do it more, it's like we did some wording change.
We did, but so like the dumpster enclosures, how those are required things, do we want to go as far as to offer incentives, when it comes to people's parking lots? Do we want to expand it to go the other direction? And do we wanna start allowing for murals and bicycle racks and things like that? You know, we've talked about all these things, we've kind of gone back into, I mean, I think right now where it sits, the program's really good.
So in my opinion, I guess we can go around the table with this, I think the nicer things are, the more money's gonna come down
Sure.
to the area. The nicer things are, and we're using their tax money to make their area nicer. It's not like we're taking money from people, you know, this is their
Right.
tax money. And we're helping them make the area nicer, which should attract more capital to the area and then make even more, funds available, so. Anybody else wanna go on or?
No, I mean, I agree. I think the program's a good one. It's a way of jump-starting some
Sure.
small things that, as you start the small things, it starts other things happening.
Definitely.
And, I think you've even seen that because, you know, Casa Marina did some things, but, Ritz across the streets, or, excuse me, Mango's across the street started painting their facade.
Yeah.
They didn't ask for a grant, they just went ahead and started painting.
Did.
And so I think it helps in trying to make some improvements by some small investments on our part. I think it's the best money that we can spend
Yeah.
is doing that. And I'm gonna backtrack just for a second.
Sure.
Going back to landscaping.
Okay.
The, 4 Point Sheridan, I just went by there this afternoon, and they put gravel down in their planter beds.
That is a composite, like aggregate
Okay,
type,
yes, and
and
it's
it's
an
gonna, I believe it's gonna be a base, and then they're gonna sort of have the plants around the perimeter. They were one of the ones that received a facade grant, and then Parks and Recreation, that was one of the two that you guys said will award it contingent upon Parks approving what they wanna do, that it's consistent, and so Parks and Recreation reviewed their landscape plans and gave it the green light.
Well, it's, you know, obviously quite a bit different than what we're gonna be doing in the planters down through there. So it just dawned on me that I saw that a little while ago, and I was really surprised at seeing, you know, it looked like 57 stone is what it looked like to me, but, it may be a different product. But anyway.
So I'd like to see it expanded. I think you were smart to put in the, you know, clauses in there so people can't abuse it. So as long as we keep those clauses in there to keep, building owners and business owners from abusing it, then I think it's a pretty dang good, you know,
Yeah.
thing that the CRA has done.
And I'll also make sure before that meeting to kind of have a comprehensive report of how many have been awarded, what the dollar amounts are, what they're for, and then the ones that I have before and after photos of completion, I'll have those for the meeting as well.
All right.
Can you use the side grant program for landscaping?
Yep.
Anything else on facade grants? Public art installations.
Yep, so, again, this will kind of fall more under just like updating, the public art committee was new. Public art at all here was new, we had never done public art, well, we had done the, Dolphin and the Boy statue, but that wasn't even really a public art project per se, it was just kind of I mean, it's beautiful, but it was kind of one-time project, as well as the surfer statue, which was a donation, so.
Well, the mayor did bring the UNF sculpture garden
True.
to there, that's when she was mayor though.
Right, but even still, those, you know, aren't city-funded projects, CRA funded, I should say. So, as you know, we've done 2 murals, our sculptures awarded, we're getting ready to start on that. I know before I talked about that Sea Life in the City project, we're doing the turtle. We finalized the design contract with Havoc Studios, which is the local studio who actually does the UNF sculpture garden. So that contract, I literally just got it green light from the city attorney, so we'll get council to approve that, and then we'll be able to start working with Havoc on creating that turtle. And then the art committee at their next meeting, from their last meeting, we kind of gave them some homework of brainstorm some ideas on bringing more temporary art installations. That's a big thing we're seeing in a lot of busy, booming cities in Florida. We're seeing a lot of the temporary art installations that are activating otherwise dead spaces during slower times of year, and bringing people to the area when you really don't have anything else going on. So that was one of their kind of homework assignments, was to bring some of those ideas to us, and then some of the bigger, what are our goals in FY '25? So I'll bring those back to you guys, and obviously I will have that meeting, we'll have those topics well before we go into our next workshop. So really at that meeting, it'll just be, again, providing an update to council on
I think I'm saying it right, Winwood. No walls. So it's like an old downtown area, art on everything, every telephone pole, every sidewalk, every wall, every business had its own mural. And the place was just packed with people.
Yeah.
Block, several blocks. It was really cool. If anybody gets to go down there, great art example. Kind of a gritty, grungy area, but it was also just super artsy. And,
Yeah.
and they've got this, whatever these Winwood walls became organically started, and now they're charging $12 to go and see the actual
Yeah.
wall, and they have just lots of art museums now that have started to organically grow off of that.
And we'll also talk about having some type of a local arts festival where we have, several muralists painting murals same time. I think we referenced that Macon Arts Festival that I've been to. Several places do that where they'll pick a Saturday and Sunday, they'll kind of have a paint off. It would be a great time to paint on public restroom facades, pick a local artist to do the work. So we'll kind of have a little summary on that plan, what we want to see there, as well as just some ideas. We're seeing a lot of really unique ways to make otherwise boring spaces more creative. Like one thing that we're seeing across the state are crosswalks. People are painting these really unique murals on crosswalks, and in some areas of downtown where it's hard to see the crosswalks, well, okay, now you have this massive neon, path showing you like, all right, I'm gonna cross here. We're seeing a lot of storm drains being painted. They're really ugly, normal, and they're having schools come in and different programs come in. So there's a lot of really unique ways to activate spaces that are otherwise just there and just kind of serving a utilitarian purpose, and we can activate those. So we'll provide some updates on that to you guys and to council as well. Yes, sir.
One thought, back to the UNF sculpture.
Mhm.
Recently, they were trying to auction off some of the pieces that were in that
Mhm.
park. And the question would be, is there something that would be of interest on the part of the city to purchase and maybe put in a more permanent location
Yeah.
as a possibility, so that, we're promoting local artists
Sure.
and things to that extent? Just a thought. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how the art committee feels about that, but,
Yeah, I'm happy to bring that up, and that's something we've even talked about before. Unfortunately, the last time it happened, it was like, someone came to us, I'm not gonna say which elected official, the mayor, came to us like 2 days before the auction and said, hey, they're auctioning this awesome piece. And we're like, great, we don't have a meeting, so we can't do anything about it. We would love to buy it, but because it's an auction, we get into like a little bit of a weird area there. But that's something, again, we now have a city attorney again, so I am very happy to go have some conversations and see how we can, because the mayor had that same idea, and I think that could be a really, I totally agree.
I have another Gary, idea that I'd like to just bring up. When we have the ability for the art to tell the art committee what we're interested in, like
Yeah.
city council is to tell us.
Sure.
One of his ideas that still has stuck with me is that Trash Can Alley on Second and near Salt, it's like on First Street, but between First and Second, and it's over there by, why can't I think of the name of the restaurant right now?
it's,
But Beachside and to Beachside and,
it's,
Is that Fifth Ave?
it's,
Or you-
no,
it's.
The one by Surfer?
by Surfer, thank
Oh,
you.
yeah.
By Surfer, the Trash Can Alley, like,
Okay.
and we had talked about maybe, I know that you said we couldn't attach the buildings because they're private buildings, and I know we had this whole, but I think that we could make that an interactive, fun little alleyway, because if we're trying to encourage people
Let's
to.
call it out for you,
do
plan.
something. So I don't know, I just
Yeah.
thought if we have the ability to bring that up.
So I would encourage everyone, since we're not in a formal meeting and we can't technically vote, if you have an idea like that and you want to email it to me,
Yeah.
I can take it to the art committee. Their meeting is in like 2 weeks, so I am really happy. Please email me that so I can take it to them, and then I can just kind of add to their brainstorming.
Okay, that's cool.
Yep.
And that holds true for any ideas. If you email it to her, she
Please
can-
do.
Oh, and so people who work here, just so you know, we're really not focusing on the pure parking art right now because it'll get destroyed when we do pure parking. Even though they have an idea for pure parking, okay, go ahead, sorry.
Anything else on the public art installation? All right, moving on. Downtown safety.
I apologize for lack of bullets. This is not my expertise, and I'm always very cautious with how I speak to this because this is just not my area of expertise. I completely leave that to the police department. I did forward you guys Chief Smith's very lengthy summary. I encourage anyone to kind of turn to that if there are specific downtown safety questions you have. Again, I'm always happy to take the questions. I am just very cautious on how much I speak to that topic. I don't want to misspeak. I know there are a lot of ideas being thrown around, a lot of stuff we're being brainstorming again. We're in a very good time for brainstorming because we are planning for next year's budget, which is great.
I've spoken to the mayor, and
Yeah.
I said, as a CRA, we'll fund whatever's needed. I've talked to police, they say we're giving them everything they need, so, I mean, if they ask for it, I'm fairly certain this board's gonna fund it, so, it's in their court.
Well, when you go into the report and you start to read through the recommendations and some of the action items and so forth, it does touch on certain items in the downtown district
Yeah.
related to Cape and other things. I think there are some items, the question is, are there some of these items that we should undertake as part of the CRA? You know, because I think they are things that we could fund.
Sure. I mean, and I will say too, police department is very good, and I mean, they can speak to this pretty much anytime you guys have needed anything and asked for it. Agency and council even have always,
And I'm assuming, because in the recommendations, it says move additional people permanent to the Cape. We already have that funding, right?
Yes.
And they're just not
They're just not full.
They don't
Yep.
have the people.
Right,
Yep.
so, it's
exactly.
already approved, there
Yep.
you go, that,
The conclusion, last paragraph or two, of Chief Smith's, needs to be read about 3 times. It says basically we need to decide what we want, then we can do it. And that gets around all the circling we've talked on this afternoon. He's very blunt about it. But by his standards, that's a fairly blunt statement. If you read it the way I read it. He's saying, okay, you guys decide what you want. We'll pick amongst these things we mentioned with the prior 12 pages to see how we can affect going where you want to go. So that's key.
I mean, I totally agree with you that we've always provided them with everything that they've asked for on
Yeah.
numerous occasions. I've asked the chief directly whether or not they needed anything else, and the response at the time was no.
Yeah.
But as I went through the report, I started to pick up on certain things that we may want to address with him or get some further input as to whether or not there's something that we could do to help with.
Sure.
One of the things that shows up in the report that surprised me a little bit is, in reference to making sure all the downtown cameras are up and operational, and then, holding Siemens accountable for their current contractual obligations. That surprises me a little bit because, we funded those and I thought everything was up and operational, but when I read this, I start to wonder exactly where do we stand with it.
Do you want to jump in on that one? Neither do I.
Again, it's more information to make sure that we can all feel comfortable that we're doing everything that we in our
Sure.
power to help the police department.
Yeah, and I think funding of, in a lot of ways, I want to make sure I say this very tactfully, funding those cameras and supporting that initiative was doing what we could do. I am not responsible for the contract with Siemens. This agency is not responsible for that contract. That is a PD contract, and then as far as, not even necessarily PD, but that goes even deeper into our IS department, and that is their, essentially responsibility to maintain the functionality of those contracts. And so while I completely understand your stance on that, a lot of that kind of falls outside of our scope. So I would say, applaud the agency for agreeing and funding that project, and that really is where the responsibility, at least from this specific agency, that's kind of where that responsibility ended. We funded it, we funded the maintenance. That maintenance is now forever a line item in our budget, and that's really what our job is to do. What PD and IT, or excuse me, IS have to do then with Siemens kind of falls outside of our scope.
Yeah, I will say, when I talked to him, it's been a while now, basically, they're just having a hiring issue to fill all the spots.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
So we can't
universal.
really do anything about that. We've already provided the spots here, they're just not full. That's no one's fault here or even the police department. That's just,
1000%.
that's just the environment that we're in. And
Yep.
they have the technology room or I forgot what they call it, like whatever the room is with all the TVs and stuff.
Yeah.
And they do have people on that, but it's just a matter of staffing, I think more,
Yeah.
as well as whoever's in charge of that. So we would never know if
Yeah.
things are not working as needed, and we just have to provide, and I think we've done that. So him saying, like in the paragraph, if you read it away, I'll tell you, I just want you guys to have the support to do what you need, and that's pretty much the answer. And he just needs the environment and the current, hiring situation to free up for him.
I think the agency does a great job though of supporting their initiatives.
So on this one, we're good.
I'm a forever optimist, so when he wrote that, look where we were 20 years ago, look at where we are now,
Yeah?
how much better it is. It's not gonna be perfect, but, you know, it's, to me, that's encouraging.
I do have a follow-up question from past discussions with
Sure.
him now in this, and it maybe it's not the right time, and it's definitely not something we wanna bring up to city council in our meeting with them, but, so it may not be appropriate to bring it up, but he did say that we don't wanna be, super hard on the homeless or misplaced, right? Because we end up being, no arrest zone or something like that, and we can't really do anything about certain agencies that bring them here for beach communities. Is that what I remember? Like, we aren't like saying, hey, we want you to do hardcore, no.
I don't know that I am the appropriate one to speak to that.
I feel like that's what we talked about because of the rules, and I think the city attorney said, well, it could turn into an issue.
The state of Florida has tried to tell us what to do in that regard. I don't know
Yeah,
where that stands.
they sure did.
Yeah.
I don't know where that stands
Well,
legally right now, but
that
I believe
has-
that's what he was addressing.
Yeah, that,
The
that
brand new law where we have to
Yeah.
supply a space and water and facilities so we can ship or.
if it's impacting a
transport.
private business, yeah.
I don't know where that stands as far as.
And Karis would be the
implementation, but that's
appropriate one.
a mouthful of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because it's
Sorry.
also.
No.
Okay, I was just
The
curious.
governor signed it into law, it goes into effect October 1.
Yep.
But you're not going to be, individual entities will not be held accountable until January. So they're
Yep.
giving time for cities and communities to
Ramp it up.
implement.
Get a game
3
plan.
months?
Well, I mean, you know
I'm
now
sorry.
that's moving, so they expect you to keep moving now. 'cause
And
it's
everyone
signed.
internally that needs to know is very much aware, the police department is very much
But
aware,
that's
the
not something we're gonna be
administration.
talking about
Yeah.
for this. And
You're right.
My only question is though, is even though we're our own lawyer, we're just considering Jacksonville Beach, the Jacksonville Beach issue. That's like, we don't have to worry about it in our areas, our zone.
Correct.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Al.
Just in reference to safety, just out of curiosity, where do we stand with the installation of cameras and things down in, the South Beach area, down in, the park area?
I'm always, again, that's very cautious to speak on that topic. I don't like talking about what's up, what's not, what's running, what's not. But I do know that everything that was supposed to be done has been completed. And there might be minor.
That's all, I just,
Yeah.
we haven't heard anything more on that, and I just wanted.
Yeah, and that maintenance line item is a line item in our budget, so we will be continuing to maintain. There is a little bit left, in this fiscal year in the way of installation costs, and I think that was just kind of a couple of last minute things, but that project is ongoing and been working on, so.
Should be
October, because that will then be once our really, really, really nice hot warm weather has slowed down. It just does not seem practical or responsible to now say, okay, here we are in busiest season, we're gonna rip up 100 parking spaces. I mean, that's crazy. Sorry for lack of better terms. So right now, our main priority is getting that fenced in area open, clean, functional, so we can add those spaces back, add that drop-off zone back, and then go back to that overall comprehensive project once the summer season has completed.
What kind of timetable are you looking at?
By the end of May,
Okay.
I mean, that's being aggressive, but I mean, you can ask Heather, I literally like
Is it June 1st?
stalked someone down in the hallway one day to give answers, like I'm being pretty aggressive on getting this pushed forward. Really and truly, our biggest holdup is gonna be getting that electrical fixed so we can get those lights back up, because as you all know, this isn't as simple as plugging into an electrical outlet. It does take a little more work than that to get those lights in, but because we do have the fixtures that are FDEP approved, that makes it a whole lot easier. And then just trying to figure out how we can match those pavers. If you've been over there, that area is really beat up. We obviously do not have those exact identical pavers anymore. What happened to them is beyond me. I have no clue where they went. So right now, I literally was over there the other day after I got a coffee from the new Starbucks. I walked in there and I was just literally looking at the types of pavers that we have on those pallets, trying to figure out how we can match them up. And if we can't match them up, how can we do a design where it at least looks kind of organic and like it was intentional, and it doesn't just look like a big patch. So
It'd be awesome if we had it done before our
yeah.
joint meeting.
It would be.
And that meeting is sometime in May, so, listen, if I got to, I'll go put some overalls on and lay some papers. I mean, we'll do what we gotta do. I'll be calling you guys to help, but,
Yeah.
Is this a good time to maybe have the discussion about, we purposely avoided putting up biking, devices, and, because we were tearing out whole, and
Sure.
art, like
Yeah.
all that stuff, we just basically avoided that area. If your art committee is talking about temporary art, is it a good way to throw a temporary art piece in there for the next year?
possibly.
Or, is it a good idea to, do we have, I guess the real question, do we have any extra biking racks that came from our last purchasing that we could
Not
throw?
decorative, but the plain ones, yes.
Just, can we just throw them over there and put them in the dirt piles
Yeah.
that are over there so people can park and not just leave them against
Yeah.
the boardwalk or throw them in the dunes? That would be fabulous.
Yep.
If we put the vote on it, we can do it in 2 weeks.
Yes. On that note, great segue. Thank you for talking about the bike racks. If anyone has noticed, we have 25 benches downtown now. You may not notice because the intent there was for them to be very discreet and very organic, and you guys did a great job of that. They blend in very, very well. They look phenomenal.
So the stone things between the sharks, that's the
Yes.
the problem, yeah,
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
There, again, we had to be creative. We didn't want something that was going to, unfortunately, for a lack of better phrasing here, that was going to encourage long-term snoozing. So we went with that smaller, triangular, I call them shark's teeth. They're just like a small triangle. I did go out and personally test all of them. I could not now. So you're welcome, I tried. They're comfortable. I noticed people, we put some in a really cool location, so a lot of people drop off, at the lifeguard station area. We put 2 actually in the sand right there, kind of by where our bike racks are. I went out the other day and our communications manager got some pictures. People were sitting on them, putting stuff in their beach bags. Kids were sitting there, somebody was tying a bike up. So it was really cool to see things that we put there intentionally actually being utilized in the way that we intended for them to be. So yeah, they're all throughout downtown. We've got several on the boardwalk, so that was really cool because those have been gone forever now. We've got some at kind of the steps that are right by the restrooms. We've got some between the shark bike racks because we figured, you gotta tie your bike up, sit down, get your stuff together, whatever. We've got some over kind of by the Cape parking lot because, a lot of people park there. So we tried to kind of utilize areas where people would be either parking or waiting for something where it made sense. So we've got those ordered. We have realized that a lot of people like the ones on the boardwalk. So I thought having 25 was having extra, and we ended up using all of them because we realized how functional they were on the boardwalk, and we have money left over this fiscal year, end up ordering 10 or so more for the boardwalk. But that will come back to you guys, so don't worry. I'm not just gonna go randomly go to Lowe's and buy some, I promise. But yeah, so we're really happy to see those. So now we've got bike racks, trash cans, our new benches in, so
Got the basics.
Now we just
That's-
need
large cohesive plan, because at the time there were a lot of functions in silos, if you will. We've all kind of decided that having that more modern look makes sense. It doesn't make sense to have like, what does the mayor call these Charles Dickens like fixtures? We are not a historic downtown, we are a beach town. Beaches Energy has installed a couple of new lights in the southern part of downtown on a trial basis. They've got a couple of new poles out. And, you know, they were measuring the photometrics to make sure that it did what it was supposed to do. Unfortunately, that's just an ongoing project. We have money still, and as we're working on CIP for 25 and 26 to continue to support Beaches Energy. And
I thought we had put that into the budget.
we did. It's one of those things that's just taking a lot more time than we would ideally like. So it'll be one of those line items that will be carried over.
At one time, we also approved a certain, they came in with
Mhm.
different options, and so
Yep.
are they still going with
Mhm.
the same option?
Yeah, those more modern, I hate the word futuristic, 'cause it makes it sound like we're like the Jetsons, but that more futuristic, unique looking light that wasn't so historic, yeah. Yep. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's not a better update, it's just taken,
No, that's not
quite a bit of time, unfortunately.
Is there any issue that we, other than these, that we need to discuss, or?
I do want to note, Latham Plaza was a biggie, and we were supposed to discuss that at the briefing Monday night. We got kicked off of that briefing, they didn't want to talk to them, I'm just kidding. They had other items, and unfortunately, we only have until 7:30 at those briefings because of planning commission, or 7 o'clock, excuse me, so we have a hard stop, and there just was not going to be enough time. So we have not yet sat down and talked with city council on that. I know we got your guys' feedback, we got your comments, we met internally, like I said, we met with fire marshal, police, public works, parks, we've kind of done all of our homework inside as well. So that'll be the last step, we'll be sitting down with city council.
Is that not gonna be discussed in the joint?
It will, yes, we were just hoping to be able to discuss it at that briefing,
Okay.
but since we did not, this will still be at the joint meeting. But I just want to let you guys know that unfortunately that did not happen Monday.
I guess we should let everyone know where that was when we left it, because we thought we were ready to go, and then it just got pulled carpet from underneath us, I felt like, so.
Oh, you know what, you weren't, was that the meeting Francis you might
I
have,
might have missed.
that was what it was, so we had a pretty, I feel like, everyone was on the same page. I will send you the notes, I'm sorry, yeah, I will make sure I send this to you, I apologize that I didn't, I just completely forgot that was when we were gone.
So, yeah.
But yeah, so the agent,
Cut up.
The mayor expressed to me that she was concerned that, are we not going big enough? I'm like, well, we went big the first time.
Well, yeah,
Now
we
we,
did.
now we scaled it back. I like it. I told her, I was like, look, we all really liked it. And she was like, all right, I'll take a look at it again. I think it's solid.
It needs to go and.
Yeah.
Because I came out here for, obviously, Spring in the Blues, it was awesome.
yeah.
The week before that, I went to go eat at, Oaxaca, and there wasn't a single person out in that plaza whatsoever. So, and that's a beautiful Saturday afternoon. So we need to make this place something that, on a Saturday afternoon with beautiful weather, there's people there. So,
I would love to hear those notes, because
Yeah, so the agency, I will give everyone credit, everyone really came to consensus, everybody agreed,
I'm not sure.
That's why we did it with them.
minus Gary,
because I wasn't here, is that what you're saying, Declan?
Well,
yeah.
No strong opinions were in the conversation.
one of the things I thought that
We'll get him, don't worry.
we
Good.
did is we kind of swung the opposite way.
Sure.
Supposedly, at one time, we listened to the community and designed something
Yep.
that the community really wanted. Then the vendors got involved.
Sure,
Now we've swung back the other way to accommodate all the vendors.
At the direction of council.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I think the meeting that you held was one only with vendors, and I really think the community should have been involved a little
No,
bit
the
more.
community was.
At the same time, at the table, to come up with the ideas and the concepts that would work for them.
Yeah.
To make that an active space, because if we just make it for vendors, it's not going to be an active space other than for festival times.
Those public meetings were
Could you guys
community meetings, everybody was,
tell me, because when I left it, city council said we could only have 1/3 of that one part. So
so
did we eventually say?
what happened is
back
we,
this halfway?
so we took basically where the surfer statue is right now,
Correct.
from north to south,
Yeah.
all the way back towards City Hall. All of that is gonna have those, that little elevation change, the ground level statues for kids,
That's the 1/3.
seating all around the edges, additional shade, and then the permanent smaller stage area, as well as a roof covering over that stage. We'll have some lighting, safety That'll be kind of the more activated element, and then instead of having a bunch of pathways going off, it has 10, potentially 12, depending on how wide we can get it, straight down the middle to the Seawalk side. Then instead of having the 4 tiers, we scaled it back and it's flat within 2 tiers with just about a foot elevation change between the two. So that the highest point in the back of the tiers is only 3 feet, which PD appreciates because then they're not trying to fight to look over anything. And then those tiers are 20 feet wide, so we can still have 10-foot tents and then still have plenty of room for ADA accessibility, regular accessibility. Up the center of those are 10-foot wide ramps that gradually go up again so you can access it no matter how you need to access. We upgraded the AV equipment, all of the electrical, the bollards, we're trying to hide where people plug in so we don't have people out there randomly charging their phones, which is technically a safety hazard that we deal with now. And then additional Wi-Fi in the area, and we did away with the water feature.
I would say, did the water feature go away? Or
It
the
did go away.
interactive feature So the interactive feature's gone away. And how about the direct path along the west coast?
That's state. Well,
Because remember we had a west path going.
hold on, let me get my directions. So on the south portion of that, going all the way from Second, all the way straight to the boardwalk so you can bypass it completely,
Correct.
yes, that still stays. That's critical.
So you have that direct, and
Yep.
then you have the through the park
Yep.
direct.
Yes.
And there's
Fine.
planters
Yeah.
that are
Included,
there
yep.
for, blocking out that street for events and such, but
So, okay.
And since our
I think
meeting,
you'll like it.
I have not shared these yet.
No chess tables, no.
Well, there's a,
Is there a chess table out there?
no, but,
I mean, I can put one
I'm
if
joking.
you'd like. We can play chess.
but in the corners, there's like a turtle,
Yeah.
right? And in
Yeah.
the corners of the stage, there's stuff going on.
But nothing from,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
majority of it is.
I mean, if we touch that, we're gonna get yelled at.
Yeah. we won't get
And-
a third.
To, again, our events coordinators, credit, she's programmed those acoustic concerts monthly now and several smaller events, and having that flatter, larger, grassier space, that was the other thing, I knew I was forgetting something. Right in front of that stage area, we had some kind of paved areas, and at our meeting, we had talked about just kind of rounding out the grassy turf space, because people do come and sit and watch those concerts, and then for things like Spring the Blues, we have a second stage in a lot of our other festivals, so people can sit. Overall, I mean, I think it's not what we started with, but it's not a complete 180. It still achieves some more activation than we're currently getting.
So the only thing I'll add to that, then, since that wasn't part of the meeting, the only thing I would add to that is that we have this retirement community like right here, and having stuff activated for them to walk a few blocks to enjoy that park. That's why I've been mentioning, interactive tables
Yeah,
or some kind
sure.
of place where they can comfortably sit in the shade and have some ambient noise of some sort.
Mhm.
That's why I kept pushing for those things. So maybe it's an afterthought since I don't want to stop anything.
Yeah,
But maybe as an afterthought, we can consider those things as a board
sure.
so that we can draw that community out to utilize their neighborhood. 'Cause it is
We saw them in Jekyll Ruin the other day. You remember that? That was so
I
fun.
mean, they have a place to play bongo or whatever, they'd be happy.
If the stage starts to get used more often, I'd like to see permanent, picnic tables around like that Oak Park in St. Augustine.
Yeah.
Because if there's gonna be enough people using it, then just let's put a bunch of
And my gut tells me I can be very wrong, but I think once we get through, this redesign, this construction phase, I think this will become something that maybe every year, who knows, we realize, okay, well, let's add this element, because we realize this works really well, and we wanna expand on this, and okay, hey, this element is great, but it's gonna call for the support of having additional tables or whatever. I think this will be an ongoing project. I don't think it's gonna be a one-stop shop where we do construction, we build a